Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar today. This is Tom Adelsman with the Finishers Project. We have Phill Sandahl with us to talk about tent making today, and Phill is the Operations Director for Global Opportunities. Let me encourage you to write down any questions you have during the presentation, and you'll see a place for doing so on your screen. Phill will respond to your questions at the end of the session. Again, Phill, it's great to have you with us. And before you begin your presentation, tell us how the Lord has directed you to where you are today.
Thank you, Tom. It's good to be with the group today. I grew up in a Christian home, and as a teenager God began to speak to me about international ministry. So my preparation was always aimed in that direction. And I began my ministry in Ecuador with a mission group now known as HCJB Global. It's changed its name several times, but that's the current name. My wife and I raised our 4 boys there, and later I was assigned to an intermission task force and moved to the U.S. Center for World Mission in Pasadena. When my aging parents became ill, I found it necessary to take a leave of absence and moved back to Indiana and took a position in a manufacturing company. There I gained experience working in the commercial business environment. Then, when situation changed, it was back to international work, this time as country director for a Christian relief and development organization in Guatemala. Now I'm combining my experience in all of those different areas, helping marketplace workers find their place in overseas effective ministry. You might want to know who Global Opportunities is. It's not a well-known name, though it's an older organization. We call it GO for short. It began more than 25 years ago by a person called Ruth Siemens. She had wanted to do mission work since her youth, but having contracted tuberculosis, she could not meet the health requirements for mission agencies. But God opened a way for her nonetheless. She took a paid teaching position in Peru. The rest, as they say, is history. You can read her story in one of the articles on our website. Go is dedicated to showing other lay people how they too can take their skills to the marketplace and how they fit into God's plan to reach the nations. We show how the church can take the gospel to the world through the marketplace. Go mobilizes, mentors, and trains tent makers. The Bible refers to these people, like Paul, the apostle, as tent makers. Go is also a Finishers Project partner. We have teamed up with them to help those who are transitioning into a new phase of their life and want to put their skills and experience to work for the kingdom overseas. We offer training materials, free seminars to anyone who will host us. These are introductory overviews of how God has used tent making in the past and the possibilities for the future. These normally run from 2 to 4 hours depending on the requirements. For those who are seriously considering going as tent makers, Go offers in-depth course preparation in North America and Europe. These are much like a college course. We cram 40 hours into 4 days of study, and they're held throughout North America and Europe. Go also produces training materials which are available for download on our web page. Tent Making Briefs is a monthly e-journal with 2 or 3 timely articles of news and best practice advice for tent makers. We draw on our network of practitioners and years of experience working with them for the ideas that go into this publication. Go also connects tent makers on the field with other tent makers. What distinguishes Go from many other organizations you may have worked with is that we are not a sending agency. We are not recruiting people to join our organization. We just want to see the best equipped and most effective kingdom workers on the field. What is tent making? The term comes from the New Testament model of the life of Paul the Apostle. There are many definitions, and in fact, some theologians would dispute about the definitions, but there's general agreement on the key tenets. Throughout history, there have been many examples of tent making. When you boil it down to its simplest form, the Apostle Paul was self-supported. He used work as a means of reaching seekers, and he used his actions in the workplace to model Christian principles. Today, that takes many different forms. We see entrepreneurs and small business people working in different countries. We see employees who are believers who take positions in national companies or in consulting roles. There are many kinds of specialists in education, medicine, engineering, agriculture. Just about anything you can imagine can be a basis for establishing a tent-making ministry. The key is that it has to be a place where skills are needed in the country. There are tent makers in every country, including many in countries considered closed. Let's be clear. Some people are waiting for a call. The call, the command, and the promise. Jesus begins by saying, "Come, follow me." Then he says, "Go and make disciples of all nations. And lo, I am with you always." So there you have the call, the command, and the best part of all, that he will be with you, the promise. Now you've been officially called and commanded to go. You already have a calling. What are you waiting for? God made you the way you are. He equipped you that way on purpose. Don't casually discard what God has done and try and be something else. He has prepared you so that you are just what you need to be to complete the mission he has for you. Your skills and your passion will allow you to connect with people others can't reach. A tent maker working in a country that also had traditional missionaries was asking his national friends who were coming to him for spiritual guidance if they knew the missionary who had been working in the country for many years. He wanted to encourage them to consult with the professional missionary. "Oh, they're very nice people, his friends said, but they're paid to be religious. I don't think a person like that can understand me. You, on the other hand, are a worker like me, and I can see that your faith is genuine and how God helps you in life. I can see how God could work for me. Look at your passions and look at your skills. How does your preparation fit you to share Christ to the nations? Don't allow others to diminish how God has called you, how he has made you, or tell you that you need to retool. You are the way God wants to use you. Most of you have heard of the 1040 window. That's the area between the 10th and 40th latitudes, and it's often used as a shorthand to refer to a group of different nations and peoples. To refresh your memory, here's some startling statistics about this region. 65 countries, 3.9 billion people, 2/3 of the world's population. 85% of the poorest live in this area. There's rampant persecution of Christians at 200,000 a year. That comes out to 22 every hour. 97% who have not heard live in this area. Yet less than 3% of the missionaries work among these people. The 1040 window. is a restricted area where missionaries are not welcome. Yet, the most needy areas are the ones most likely to deny access to the Christian workers. The good news is they welcome professionals. They may happen to be Christians, but they welcome them. Every day they welcome them. God has prepared you to make a difference. Many countries restrict access to Christian workers, but we at Global Opportunities have not found a country that would not welcome foreigners who had a skill to contribute to the country's development. So, should the gospel just go where missionaries are welcome? I think the answer is pretty obvious. Let's take a moment and look at another set of statistics. Where the harvest is greatest, where are the laborers? And where the dollars are fewest. In institutional church, spending is least where the need is greatest. But there's good news here too. Church spending is minimal when people of the church go as paid professionals. You are the church, and God has prepared you to be able to give witness to Him in all the world. Let's take a moment and clear up some misunderstandings we have encountered about tent making. There is no sneaking involved. We encourage people to be very open about their faith. Recommend trying to include their faith on the first page of any application. You have nothing to hide. Remember, they are welcoming you for your skills. They assume you have a faith, and it might be different from theirs. In fact, if you are coming from the West, they actually assume you are a Christian, even if you aren't. So you might as well be upfront about it, and it makes things a lot easier later on. Tent making strategy is successful because it is a 24/7 integrated faith lived out in daily relationships. It's not about programs. We'll come back to this point later because it's one that I hear all the time, that, well, I'll be so busy doing my work, I won't have time to do the ministry. And that misses the point that the work is the ministry. Don't neglect the link with your home church. You will not be a lone ranger. You will want to involve them, and you should go with their blessing. You should not leave until you have a healthy home church relationship. Go hasn't even told people they wouldn't help them until they got that part of their life in order. Just being a Christian does not make you a tent maker. Intentionality is key. You need to be prepared to know how to give voice to the hope that lies within you. You need to have the tools and a game plan. God has prepared you specifically for the task He's calling you to do. Your skills and the passions you have are His handiwork. There are no closed countries. We can't stress this enough. Another big advantage of tent making is that it helps pay the bills. There are no or minimal support raising requirements for tent makers. For many people, support becomes a big obstacle. For the tent maker, it is practically a non-issue. In fact, at times, the much bigger issue is materialism, and that has been the downfall of some tent makers. Tent making gives you a natural role in the community. This gives you a credible identity. This is critical for relationship building. The people can understand why you are there, and they identify with you as one of them. This enables you to model the Christian life for the national believers. They can see how one's faith is a natural part of who they are and how it fits into their daily lives. Talking about your faith is welcome. Thinking about our own experience in the West, this may come as a surprise, but many people are actually very curious about your faith, and in most countries will ask you about it. In fact, it is very rude not to give them an answer. Are you prepared to give them an appropriate response? Job satisfaction. I like this one. We exercise our giftedness for the Lord, and we find it pleasurable for us. It makes you feel good, and it makes you feel fulfilled. But I love what Chariots of Fire Olympian Eric Liddell said. God made me to run. When I run fast, I can feel his pleasure. There are three types of people who go under the label of tent makers. There are employees. They must have a skill that is needed, and it is not healthy to take an unskilled job that a local person could do. So you have to see where your skills contribute to the national development. Then there are the employer types. These are people doing business, not just any business, but a business that creates jobs and is a blessing to the community. They have to be intentional about conducting business with kingdom values towards their employers, towards clients, towards the authorities, and the community as a whole. You should bring God's blessing to everyone you have contact with if you are a job-making tent maker. There's a third category that I would call hypocrites. They dishonor God and they do more harm than good. You know, the ones who have a bait and switch approach. They really aren't fooling anyone, but they say they're coming to do business, and once they get their visa, they use their time in the country for other purposes. There are a whole range of types of tent makers within those categories. To keep it simple, we will boil it down to two main categories. Employees are usually professionals. They work with someone else, teachers, engineers, consultants, agronomists, etc. They have some kind of a skill needed in the country, and they need someone to hire them. The other type are identified frequently as business as mission people, or BAM, or employers. They are business people who hire. Usually they're hiring local nationals. They're creating jobs. They're adding value to the community. This calls for a real entrepreneurial spirit. Both of these categories are tent makers. If you're a job taker or an employee, let's look at some of the characteristics of the kind of a work situation you're going to end up with. You will have full salary support in most cases, or at least a substantial salary. We have some folks who find that if they have to send children to international schools, their salary doesn't quite cover all costs, but in other cases they have more than enough. You have a legitimate local identity as part of a registered company. Frequently your round-trip travel is provided for you, and sometimes that even includes additional R&R vacation times. You have excellent opportunities for focused witness in the context of the work relationships. Housing and children's education are often included in incentive packages. Now let's look at the job maker. It provides a natural setting to meet and influence people, not just the employees and the clients. A businessman in India, for example, is being asked to teach in the university, and a government official asked if he would open up his internal company training to other people in the community. Specifically, he was asked to help in training on business ethics. Do you think that could be a useful opportunity? A business as mission person will be working to improve a lot of the people, primarily through jobs and skills training. They have opportunity to model kingdom values and bless the community. The core values of the company need to be established in the corporate culture of that company and permeate all the decisions that they make. It has to be topmost in the minds of the employees and control their actions. One company even has its core values printed on their computer mouse pads. They talk about how to implement the values in staff meetings. And you know you are making progress when the employees start coming to the boss and telling him that a person being considered for hire would not be a good choice because they know that that person would not accept working within that company culture. BAM offers the opportunity to bring not only spiritual transformation, but economic, social, and community transformation. When a company behaves by kingdom values, over time, they begin to change the values and ethos of the community. They raise the bar. Working in a BAM environment is not for everyone. No, not all people are cut out to be entrepreneurs and deal with the stresses of operating their own business. Probably less than 10% qualify. So it's not a done deal that you can do BAM just because that sounds like an exciting way to work in another country. Frequently, you'll need to find startup capital. Government and culture rules can be a real pain. Graft and bribes, hiring and firing rules, culturally accepted practices, all of these things add to the complexity and the difficulty of working in running a business in a different country, in a different environment. Many non-Western governments are even more bureaucratic than ours. The paperwork can take forever, and unless, of course, you're willing to play the game and pay the bribes. It's the way things are done there, you'll be told. But as a believer, that presents a real problem. How do you handle it? This is one of the big challenges to many BAM owners and operators. You also run into cultural obstacles. When is a lie not a lie? When it's done to save face or protect a friend from embarrassment or trouble. In that kind of an environment, how do you build trust and conduct business when you can't be sure your employees are giving you honest answers? Another reality is that the BAM operator is responsible for the livelihood of his employees as well as his own family. You're not an island. Your decisions will impact those around you more than you can ever imagine. Of course, there is no such thing as a 40-hour work week for a startup business. All business startups require a lot of hard work. But the work is even greater when the rules and expectations of another culture add another layer of difficulty. Let's come back to the integration of work and faith. Traditionally, people think that work is separate from the rest of life. And so their model will look something like this. 8 to 5, 9 to 5, you work, and the rest of the time is yours to go do free time activities with your family, to do your church and other activities. But that model is flawed. In reality, your faith should be integrated into every aspect of your life, including your work. Let me illustrate from the life of our founder, Ruth Siemens, who liked to talk about fishing evangelism. She used to say, Bait can be any casual thing you do or say to discreetly announce, I know about God and I'm willing to talk. Fishing evangelism is biblical. Jesus fished. He did and said things to incite questions. She gives an example. A teacher came into my office and said, weren't you lucky to find the money you lost? I almost agreed. But instead, without interrupting my work, I turned my head toward her and said, oh, it wasn't luck. I prayed like mad and God helped me to find it. Then I changed the subject. She left surprised at my answer. But because I did not push the matter, she returned and asked, you don't really think God cares about a little problem like this, do you? I then told her about a prayer God answered the previous week, and I changed the subject again, leaving her free. I wanted to explain the gospel to her from the start, but she might then have avoided me, fearing I was trying to convert her. She asked more questions on successive days because she felt she had the initiative. I let her set the pace for our conversations as she was ready and to set the agenda. This kind of approach is part of the teaching that we develop in our courses, and it was very, very fruitful in Ruth's life, and in the life, it's worked very well in the lives of many other tent makers. Who can be a tent maker? There is opportunity for practically everyone that you can imagine. And some of the kinds of people that can be tent makers. Wait, here they come. A little bit slower. The retirees. Can you see yourself in any one of these categories? I don't think we've left anybody out. So what are you waiting for? In fact, whether at home or overseas, we should always be living our faith out in all of our lives and practicing fishing evangelism as Ruth taught the many people who came to her. What are some of the steps in the road to tent making? You need to study and prepare. Use the time before leaving to your advantage. Practice devotion and marketplace ministry. The way you are at home is a predictor of how you will be overseas. The practice and habits you form now will be the ones you'll take with you overseas. Work on your personal spiritual growth continually. Then put it into practice during your faith in daily life, in the workplace, and other casual social events outside the church. In reality, you should be doing this whether you go overseas or not. In fact, some people who come to our course conclude that they're not ready for the cross-cultural side of being an international tent maker, but realize that they have been equipped to be much more effective right where God has them in the workplace they're at now. Form a prayer team. Prayer is an indispensable part of your support. The team also can help you in the areas of accountability. Start early on this. Start now. This is something that takes time to, doesn't need to be a large group, but it needs to be a group that are really committed to supporting you and where God is leading you in prayer. I can't stress hospitality enough. This may be the single biggest factor in building relationships and changing people's lives. We dedicate a whole section to it in our courses. You need to prepare for working in a cross-cultural or multicultural environment. But there are many things you can do even before you go to prepare for this. Sometimes taking courses, sometimes taking advantage of the many immigrants that live around us in the community. Ideally, you'd like to find people from the same community you'll be going to live with, but even if you build relationships with other people of a different culture, it will help you to be more prepared. You'll never be 100% prepared, but the more you practice working in a multicultural environment, the better prepared you'll be. There are many tools available to help you research the global job market or the work market, depending on whether you're looking to take a job or to make jobs. But you have to do your homework. The internet has transformed the way we do this. We have an article on our website if you need further guidance on how to do this. There are also many helps on the internet for finding work both locally and internationally. Take advantage of the resources that are out there. Why am I saying upgrade your skills in teaching English as a second language? You're going to be an engineer, an IT engineer, or something else. Well, the reality is you will be asked to teach English, no matter what profession you have. You may as well be prepared. And it is often a very good way to begin building some relationships that can lead to God experiences with other people. We encourage you to attend our training, but if you don't get to our training, at least get training somewhere. There is nothing sadder than to debrief a returning tent maker and hear their discouragement about lost opportunities because they were not prepared to confront common issues we prepare them for in the course. And I can't go into the stories, but there are many people who said, I wish I had paid more attention when you talked about this, or I wish I had practiced what you had said, or I wish I had known this before I left. Many disappointing experiences can be avoided by getting prepared. You need to prepare yourself not only technically, but also spiritually. Get the home church on board. You need a sending base and support. You may not need their money, but you need them behind you. And you're not a lone ranger. This is not a negotiable point. Learn daily disciplines. You need to begin practicing right now the things that you're going to be doing overseas. Learn about discipleship. Get training on this. There are many sources available. But as people's lives are changed, they are going to look to you to guide them and disciple them. You need to be equipped and ready. Learn to live an intentional lifestyle of evangelism. Learn and practice. This seems obvious. Learn the Bible. You do not need a seminary education, but you do need to know the book. Learn how to study Scripture for yourself and how to grow in your knowledge of the Word of God. Learn how to lead Bible studies. You will need to help others learn to feed themselves as well. You will not always be there, and you need to be planning from the very start for the day that you're gone to leave something that can continue after you. Do not create a dependence on you as the source of their relationship to God. Learn to pray. Prayer is so powerful a resource in your toolkit that you can't be without it. This is another one that I can't stress enough. Learn how to start a simple church. You may find when you get there that there is no church at all. If there is a church, it's probably not going to be very much like the ones you're used to, or what you expect to see where you come from. So understand that you may be the only one helping someone establish a church, and that you need to be equipped and prepared to guide them in that process. Don't neglect your professional preparation. As I said, You're not going to take an entry-level job. You're going to provide skills and value to the country. You should be striving for excellence and integrity. Do everything as unto the Lord. Update your skills. Here I'm thinking more of your professional skills. International employers want you to add value. That's the reason they invite you. Develop your networks. You're always going to need more connections, more friends. You never know when it'll come in handy. So if you're not a networker now, start learning how to do it. Update your resume. If you're more from the European background, your CV. Take a TESOL course. English is a second language. Even a basic certificate will give you much more confidence and lends credibility to your skills in that area. Above all, practice to integrate your faith into your work. Start today and continue for the rest of your life. Okay, in summary, what do? We begin at home. Practice devotion, read, prepare. There's lots that you can find on the internet. There are other resources. There are seminars and training opportunities all over. Begin getting yourself ready for the task that you will be confronting. Form a prayer team. Start now. Let your pastor know what God is saying to you, and seek to work with him in building a support base. Investigate the options. Many tent makers go as independent agents. They accept a contract and they go and work for another company. Others go as part of a team or even through a sending agency. Know the differences between them, which one will work best for you. There are pros and cons to each model, and we talk with people about that and what's best for each of them. Practice, practice, practice hospitality. Your witness is all about relationships, and that means hospitality. Prepare culturally. I've gone over some of the ways that you can start, even in your own neighborhood, to look for immigrants or people of other cultural backgrounds and begin learning. Do the homework. Upgrade your skills. We have Go Equipped tent making course. There are other courses that you need to consider, but get some training. You can sign up on the internet on our website for our tent making briefs e-journal, or sign up on Facebook to follow us. We also have a Twitter account. At the end of the presentation, there'll be some links for you to copy if you're interested in any of those. Here are a few quick resources to consider. Working Your Way Through the Nations. It's now being revised, but don't wait till the new one comes out. A great guide on things to do to prepare for working internationally and sharing your faith. And a classic, one of the early modern tent makers, J. Christy Wilson, Today's Tent Maker, and Patrick Lai's book on tent making. There are a number of others, but these are probably three of the most well-known ones. If you're specifically interested in the business side of things, can recommend these three as great guides. Great Commission Companies, it's now in its second printing. Business's Mission by Neil Johnson, and the Old Testament Template. Okay, now for the offer. We would like to say thank you to those who have been a part of this course, and we would like to offer to send you a free ebook, Working Abroad, Today's Tent Making Challenge. If you just send an email to my address right there, I'd be happy to forward a copy to you. But wait, there's even more. If you sign up for the Go Equipped course, in the next 30 days, I will give you a $25 discount on the tuition for that training. It's held in Fort Myers in October. The details are on our webpage. Just write and tell me you heard about the course at the webinar and want the discount. Then of course you must also register. Okay, what's next? Tentmaking Briefs. Tentmaking Briefs ebook. We have a summary of all of the back issues of the articles in Tentmaking Briefs. You can download that from our website as well. Obviously, the course is highly recommended. And more information for that online. Keep talking to us. If you have questions, we'll try and answer them next. But if you think of something afterward or it's too complicated to discuss during this period, do get in touch with us again. So now let's move into the question and answers. I'm just going to put up a slide with some contact information while we're doing questions and answers. And Tom, have you seen any come across, or do you want to open the mic up? I'll throw it back to you to moderate this part of it.
Yeah, well, thank you, Phil. And boy, I've come away from your presentation knowing more about tent making than I've ever known before. Just very practical. And I want to thank you for everything that you have had for us here today. And certainly we want to take a few minutes now to hear from some of you. And I do have one question posted here. And we'll look at that right now. And then some of the rest of you, if you want to submit some questions, please do so. We've got a few minutes to deal with these. Here's the first one, Phil. I live in Minneapolis, and I'm seeking to network with like-hearted businessmen there or here. We are preparing for the next 1 to 2 years before heading overseas. Do you have any local connections in Minnesota?
Off the top of my head, I can't tell you of any direct connections. I do know that you have a very avid proponent of tent making in the form of John Piper, the pastor at, I believe it's Bethlehem Baptist Church up there.
Bethlehem Baptist, yeah.
Yeah, he is a real cheerleader for the tent making movement, has given several messages on it over the years, and he may have some follow-up connections. If you send me an email note, I could do some research and see if there are other people in our database that would be good contacts in that area.
Okay, very good. Here's another one. How important is it to be proficient in the language of the country in which you serve, or is English sufficient?
Very, very good question. Thank you. The amazing thing is that English is becoming the predominant language of business. And depending on where you go, it's stronger in some places than others. But in most cases, you can go with only a minimal amount of the national language, and English will be used quite a bit in the workplace. Now, some of the more remote areas that may not be true, but quite often that's the case. Nonetheless, we would encourage you to get as much language skill as you can, because there's no substitute for showing an interest in the language of the people that you're working among. And so the answer is, many times you can start without it, but it's a good thing to be working towards acquiring at least some knowledge of the language. But don't let language hold you back from going. An interesting experience we have is that there's a growing interest among people in Latin America to participate in tent making. And one of the biggest obstacles we have found for them is that many of them do not have a working level of English. If they have a working level of English, it becomes much easier to acquire positions overseas. So you've got to have your professional skills, whatever your profession is, whether it's in healthcare or agriculture or engineering or IT, and English. And those are almost necessities in every case.
Phill, I have a question here just for myself. Going as a professional, do those people typically become associated with a national company or with a company that has been started overseas that has Western roots to it?
It's all over the board. In most cases, we're thinking about people who go and take positions in national companies. Sometimes they're actually government companies that are hiring you because you have expertise in an area that they need help in. Other times it'll be a local business that's looking to bring in skills that they don't have. Now, one of the things you also have to be prepared to do is to teach the nationals what you know. Probably at the end of your contract, which will usually be 2 to 3 years, they will not want to renew it because they will expect that you have passed your knowledge on to somebody else and they don't need you anymore. Not to despair, usually their competitor would like to hire you to do the same thing for them. Or if they realize that you have more to teach them, they may ask you to extend and stay longer. It's a mixed environment. Some people go as employees of large multinational companies, and then what nationality is really the boss, I don't know. But you would expect to be working under national leadership many times, and sometimes that creates its own set of challenges and tensions. But if you are going in an employee status, be prepared to be working under national leadership.
Yeah. Here's another question. When you are tent making overseas, is it always better to attend a local church if there is one, or to open a new small church could be the best option to avoid conflict with the local church's doctrines or vices?
Boy, you've got some good questions here. There's no simple answer to that. One of the problems that we often encounter in tent making is what we call the expat trap, and that is where the person goes with all of the best intentions of participating in the local church, and they find that well, I want to at least go visit the international church, and they soon find that there's a great opportunity for ministry as an usher or a Sunday school teacher or something, and they end up gravitating to spending all of their time with the internationals and make no friends and have no impact with the nationals. I would say if the only church in your area is an international church, you're probably better to keep your contact with them to a minimum. If there are national churches run by nationals, that's sometimes a good means of identification and building relationships. But many times you don't have that option. There just are no churches around you. And you need to be prepared to go through some times of being in the desert, as it were, and feeding yourself. And that's why you need to be prepared spiritually as you go and have a strong prayer team behind you. And you need to be building relationships with nationals that at first will be more social, or may be more social. and can grow into Bible studies or can grow into Christian fellowships. There's no one answer. It's different in every case. But you need to be prepared for, know what the different possibilities are and be prepared to do what's best in your cultural context.
Very good. We have another one here. Can jobs be found through the Sister Cities program? Is there such a thing as an international chamber of commerce?
I have not specifically used that that avenue for looking. I would suspect that in some sister city programs there would be a good possibility of that, but I wouldn't expect that all sister city programs would have any kind of a jobs exchange. There are plenty of opportunities on the internet to find jobs in different areas. You need to not try and narrow your search to just one, but try several different different sources, and if you persist, one of them will come through. Sometimes more than one. Sometimes it happens faster than you expect. Often it takes several months of hard work.
Oh, yeah. Okay, very good. That is the extent of the questions that have come in, Phil. So I think what we'll do, we are nearing the top of the hour here, and we want to honor everyone's time and thank everybody for being a part of the webinar here today. Phil, if you can advance your slides here for a moment, I just want to let all of you know that we have a couple of webinars coming up here, one in May and one in June. And the one in May, you can see the information. I won't read it to you, but we're continuing the series that we've been doing on coaching in missions, and Sherry Dodd will be back actually with the leaders of two other coaching organizations, and they will bring a very broad perspective and also, as you see on the bottom line, real coaching clients. So we're going to have like a panel. Yeah, thank you, Phil. We're going to have like a panel of people there, and Sherry will be facilitating that webinar. That will be quite interesting. The next one is in June, and this is really a webinar based on the Perspectives course. Many of you have heard about that, and many people who submit profiles in our database have heard about Perspectives. Many have taken it, but others haven't, so we hope to get the word out about it a bit more. So Dan Dow is the Perspectives coordinator up here in the Pacific Northwest, and he's going to pull together a panel of people. And I think a lot of these people fit into that band category. And we're going to have a panel of folks who have been really touched and motivated by taking that Perspectives class. And you'll want to be a part of that and really hear what these people have to say. So that's what's coming up. So again, thank you for joining us here today, and we really appreciate the fact that you came back after last week's disappointing unable to present last week because of technical trouble that we had. And thank you for your patience, and thank you to those who have come back. And we just are confident that this has been a very worthwhile and webinar for you to participate in today. In case you're wondering why I'm hesitating, it's because I'm getting an echo of myself, and it's like I'm talking to myself, so forgive me for that, and I hope that you're not getting the same echo. So again, from Finishers Project, bless you this week, and the Lord continue to give you guidance and wisdom in your ministries, and thank you for joining us, and we look forward to having you again.